What if you, by only the way you think, what if you could affect your life and the lives of those around you for good? Today on the show, it's the Ask Me Anything show, but I'm going to start with a thought, with a scientific experiment that's proven to show that you can change your environment simply by the way you think. And the results can have radical connotations when you use them in your life. EdTalks Live is next. Hey, what's up, team? EdTalks Live. My name is Ed Rush, your host, 5-time #1 best-selling author, and your host for the most positive place on the planet for insanely implementable ideas. Today is at the Ask Me Anything show, which what that means is you can come on and you can ask me anything. Now, the way this normally works is I get a few questions in the beginning and then a whole bunch towards the end. But you know what? Today, Mike Toy came in to chat like 30 minutes before it, posted 3 questions right away. So we're going to get to those in a second. Some of those are deep dive, personal questions actually, that I'm going to get to. But before I do that, I have a question for you, and it goes like this. What would it be like if you could control your environment and also influence those around you for good simply through the way you think? As you're jumping into chat on the right-hand side, or on Facebook below, I'm going to share with you a book that I'm in the middle of reading. This book is called Conscious Acts of Creation. The author is William Tiller, Walter Dibble, and Michael Cohane. Now, I am not recommending this book, just so you know. This isn't on the Ed Rush book list that you're going to get in your weekly flight brief. It's mostly a scientific primer. There are more pages with mathematical equations on it than I even know what to do with. I'll give you an example of one of those. Here in a second. You can see that the math. Let me find a good example. You can see, when you're using intervals and x and y's and north poles and sines and cosines, that you're in a completely different category. But the researchers came and actually started in the early 70s. The researchers wondered if through the power of intention, through the power of human thought, people could influence or change things, and they started with water. In fact, what they did was they tested in a sealed environment what happened when someone thought something and what it did, and it noticeably and scientifically proven literally changed the properties of water. It literally changed the pH of the water simply because the test subjects thinking. Now, what they found, which I thought was actually the most fascinating part of this particular study, what they found was that as the person was thinking, the pH of the water would change. But over a period of maybe 15 or 30 days, it became significantly easier in the environment where they were doing the test. It became significantly easier for the test subjects to change those properties of water when they were in the same environment that they were before. And then they brought new test subjects in and thought, well, what does this environment have to do with it? What they found out is that the actual area in which they were doing the test became more conducive to creating change over time, giving them the idea that even the energy in the room was affected over a long period of time by the way someone was thinking. So here's what I want you to do. Jump into chat on the right-hand side. Tell me who you are, where you are, and what you do. I'm going to say hello to you in just a second, but I want to come to a landing on what I was just talking about, a conclusion. You ever gone into someone's house and it just feels chaotic and you don't know why you felt so chaotic? You didn't feel so chaotic before, but you walked into their house and all of a sudden you feel chaos in your life. You ever met someone and all of a sudden you feel anxious or angry or love? Have you ever walked into someone's home and just felt peace? There's a place in San Diego here. It's called Liberty Station. We go walking all the time there with our kids. Every time we go to Liberty Station, it just feels so peaceful. It's like you can just rest for a moment and all of a sudden you feel like you can even breathe better. And the only difference is it's a change of location. I recently found out, by the way, that when Liberty Station changed from a military base into a place, there's a bunch of shops and places to walk and hang out. When that happened, the Rock Church actually built their biggest church right in Liberty Station. And when they did that, the members of the church spent literally months, in certain cases years, walking around that area praying that God's blessing would be on that area. Isn't it interesting? that when you go there, you can actually sense this peaceful presence theoretically or potentially as a result of those people's prayers. And my encouragement to you is that your business, that your home, that your car, that the environment that you live in can be affected by the way that you think. Now, of course, the negative, toxic side is if your thinking is stinking thinking, then you're going to have trouble influencing your environment for good. And you may, in fact, influence it for bad. And so the reason that I always tell people, the way that you treat your own heart is the way that you're going to treat everyone else's heart. And so when would now be a really great time to give yourself a little bit of permission to smile? You know, when would now be a good time to just take a deep breath and go, you know what, life actually isn't all that bad? When would now be a really great time to look at the world in all its tumultuous chaos and go, you know what, our world is going to be a place of peace? When would now be a really great time to look at your life and your business to create great value in other people's lives? When would now be a great time to position yourself as the go-to authority so that people can come to a positive place instead of some negative place? Well, the answer to those questions is now. And you do it first by the way you think. You do it first by the way that you think about yourself and your environment and your creator. And it works in those ways. For those of you who see me do this exercise called Hearing with God, you'll know I use those categories to show you how to do that. All right, so let me jump into chat. We've got a whole bunch of the friends. Brad jumped in early on. He said, love the 21-day miracle, getting great results. What's up, Barry? Good to see you virtually from San Diego. Mike Toy came way early. Mike's got 3 questions. I'm going to cover each of those, and I really appreciate the depth in which he asked these questions. Barry Gamir, all these days. Gamar also had a question. I'm going to get to that in a second, Barry, as well. Jeez. Diana, good. I got your email, by the way. Thank you for that beautiful email. We'll get back to you ASAP on that. Just wonderful. Hello, Delisa. So good to see you as well. Robert, the 21st Century R Gang. What's up, Jim? Hey, Linda. I'm ready for positive energy as well. Hello, David Zetz. Yeah. Diana said, I saw pictures of that water. Isn't it interesting? Like Einstein's spooky actions at a distance. No joke. Ergo, control of consciousness determines quality of life. Help with a 90-minute Zoom webinar title that invites good. Linda, start putting some down, maybe in a document, because I'm going to ask you to put all of them in the chat when I get to your questions. Hello from hot Bama. Benito Rush. I don't even know if Bama's going to have a bit. I don't even know if they're going to play football this year. What's up with that? So hello, Horatio. Good to see you as well. All right, so today is the Ask Me Anything show. Let me tell you what we got going on this week. So today, I'm going to cover all of your questions in whatever order that you send them to me. And then on Thursday, I've got a show that I've been waiting to do for a while. This is 6 ways to get paid. And there are more than 6, but I'm going to show you the 6 primary ways that you can get paid. For those of you who are enrolled, don't forget that Top Gun Consulting starts August 18th and goes to the 28th. 9 days of power-packed content. I am just about done with that manual, by the way. It's pushing 200 pages. Okay, so remember, if you remember Ultimate Speaker, you're going to get something even bigger in the mail. And if you're not registered, the website is below. That website is finally populated, and it's got all of the information on there. I'll pull it up real quick so that you can see what's on there. And for those of you who got in, when you got in, you got a good deal. All right, and for those of you getting in now, you're getting a good deal too. Check it out. This is the new Top Gun Consultant page. You can see the event is August 18th to the 28th. And when you roll down, you can hear a little bit about my consulting background, a little bit about my story, and then some of the experiences and the successes that my clients have had. So pretty amazing stuff, actually, and I've been doing this for years. And the coolest thing about this, I'll just throw this up here one more time, is I'm giving a guarantee in this program that goes like this. You'll make $5,000 in the first 60 days or you get your money back. That's pretty powerful right there. And I don't know anybody who's given a guarantee like that. All right, so let's get into the questions. I'm going to start all the way in the very beginning with Mike Toy. And I really appreciate you asking this question. I also appreciate you letting me out of it, but I'm going to let myself into it. Okay. Mike says, I'm not going to type my questions while I remember them. Or I'm going to type my questions while I remember them. If it's not too personal, can you tell us more about what happened to your brother? his story and what you learned from that. So thank you, Mike, for that. I'll give you the short version, and then I'll give you a little bit of a longer version, and then I'll get into some of the things that I learned from that. So I have two brothers and a sister. My brother, Jeff, who's 11 years younger than me, passed away 3.5 years ago from a heroin overdose. As you can imagine, a young kid in his 30s, full of life, with an incredible future ahead of him. It was devastating for my family, for my parents, for sure. And my whole family went through that grieving process. And so he was truly one of the statistics of the opioid crisis that is in the United States right now. And that's the short version. The long version is it had been a struggle that he had had for, I think, probably about 7 years up until that point. He was one of those folks who would get a good run going, things were going well for him, and then all of a sudden he'd fall back into some of the challenges that he had, and then he'd have another good run, and then he would start falling back into some of those challenges. Now, there are multiple places that you could lay blame on something like this. I'll go in two directions. The first one is we truly have a major problem in our country when it comes to opioid addiction. This started from a group of pharmaceutical representatives and doctors who approved medication for pain relief in the 70s that they claimed, and you can see them on video still to this day, from the old video clips that are on YouTube, who claimed that it was not addictive at all. Well, that was not only a bold-faced lie, but it was a damaging lie to the point at which people left emergency rooms significantly addicted to painkillers. And I know people, some of the biggest thought leaders in the world, who have had issues, ended up in the hospital, ended up on some sort of pain medication inside of the hospital, and then left, and then couldn't get their mind straight because they were so desperate for the pain medication that the hospital had given them. So that is the genesis of the problem inside of our country. You can talk about crooked pharmaceutical reps. You could talk about crooked pharmaceutical CEOs. You could talk about crooked hospital CEOs or crooked politicians. The truth is, there's probably a bowl of thousands of those who reap the benefits of that sort of change that happened inside of the Food and Drug Administration in the hospital situation. Now, without going too deep in it, when it comes to Washington, D.C., for example, you know that we have two parties. We've got the UnRighteous party and the self-righteous party. Okay, so, but here's the thing you need to know about those parties. For example, if you're on the right side, if you're a conservative Republican lawmaker, you will typically be supported by the National Rifle Association. But if you're on the left, you're not going to get NRA money, but you're going to get money from places like Planned Parenthood. So, you know, there's issues where each of the lawmakers are receiving money from each side depending on the issue. I can tell you that one of the biggest donors to Republicans and Democrats alike is the pharmaceutical industry. They don't discriminate. They just give money to everyone, and it should help you understand why some of the legislation moves so quickly through Washington. You don't see big arguments on Capitol Hill regarding drug legislation like you do, for example, on guns control legislation or personal freedom type of legislations. It's really not debated, and one of the reasons it's not debated is because many of the people in Washington, as you know, are bought and paid for, and that is one part of the problem. The second part of the problem, though, is human responsibility, and you can't just look at this side of the problem and not look over here, because the truth is we have a culture and a society that has gone astray because of our leadership, but that doesn't take away from individual responsibility. So, for example, if you are protesting the issue of racism in our country, I would support you and say that not only do you have the freedom and the ability and the right to peacefully protest, but you have the responsibility, if it's something you believe in, you have the responsibility to stand up for what you believe in inside of America, but at the same time, you do not have the right to burn down a federal courthouse, okay? Even in your anger and even in your discouragement, you don't have that right. In fact, you are responsible as a citizen for the things that you say and for the things that you do. You'll notice what I didn't say are the things that you think. Now, personally, you're responsible for those, but corporately, you're not. And so in the case of my brother, Mike, the issue, of course, started with the free access to painkillers at the hospital level. He had a sports injury. But it comes also down to human responsibility. And look, my brother was a smart kid, and he knew the things that he was doing were addictive. He knew that things that he was doing were wrong. He knew that things that he was doing had the risk attached to them, and he made those decisions anyway. And so one of the difficult things, Mike, about that situation for me when my brother passed away is overcoming my, how should I say this? Overcoming my discouragement or even my anger at him for the decisions that he made, because he had such gifts, you know? He had such a way of connecting with people, and he had such a future. To really waste that was difficult for me to watch. Last thing I'll tell you is this. I'm a person that believes the mission that God's given you on planet Earth is the most important thing in your life, coupled with love. And so when that happened, Mike, one of the biggest takeaways that I took from that was the importance of taking responsibility in my own life and really pressing on for the mission, because the last thing I wanted to do was get to the end and find out, you know, I didn't do everything that I was supposed to do, okay? All right, so great first question. By the way, a whole bunch of you just joined us. My name's Ed Rush. This is the Ask Me Anything show. I'm in the middle of a question that Mike Toy just gave me about my brother passing away, actually, several years ago, and I appreciate that. Thank you for the question. By the way, we air live Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern. Would love to hear you and say hello to you. Mike's second question says, why do people naturally have a scarcity mindset rather than an abundance mindset? And what difference does it make? Hey, Mike, I think that you're... I'm only laughing at this because your question, inside of your question is a scarcity mindset about people. I'm just messing with you. All right, so he said, why do people naturally have a scarcity mindset rather than the abundance mindset, and what difference does it make? So first of all, Mike, I don't think we're born with that. I have a almost 2-year-old daughter. She has an abundance mindset about everything because everything is hers to take. She could pick things up off the ground and eat them. She doesn't think twice about that. She just walks around the yard when she wants to. If she wants to climb out of a window, she'll just try to climb out of a window. I mean, kids are naturally born with this curiosity with no limits at all. I mean, no limits at all. And as human beings, we are created like that. Now, because of the conditioning of the world that we live in, and because life is hard, the tendency is to begin to feel the trauma and to attach certain ideas or agreements to the trauma that we have. Whereas when we experience good things, it's often the case that we don't attach those agreements to those things as well. And you really do, whatever you focus on tends to grow, right? So if you focus on the good and love and kindness and generosity, that will probably grow. If you focus on the difficulty, that will begin to grow as well. And the truth is, sometimes the difficulties create a stronger pain point or a trauma than the good things. And so what happens is, let's say you have a failure in business. The challenge is to be like, gosh, I'll never be successful. Well, that agreement, I'll never be successful, can carry on for the rest of your life and become a rule inside of your life. Whereas when you're really successful in business, maybe you have like a really great year, you make a whole bunch of money and you start to feel the momentum. The tendency when that happens is not to say, hey, I am a wealthy person, look at me, and it will always be this way. See, we don't make agreements. We make these agreements, these contracts with ourselves when something bad happens, but we oftentimes don't make those contracts with ourselves when something good happens. And Mike, I just have to say thank you, because I've never taught what I just taught out loud before. I've thought through it before, but I've never put it in those words before, and now you gave me something else to think about as well. So I really appreciate that. All right, if you just joined us, and I see a bunch of you have, this is the Ask Me Anything show. My name is Ed Rush. I'm going through some questions that my amazing EdTalks Live community have put inside of chat, and I'll be taking your questions as well. Just pop them right into the chat. I think we've got 1, 2, good. Thank you, Linda. I got like 3 more questions. Okay, so I'm going to answer your questions until they're gone, and then we're going to hang out a little bit and call it a day. Okay, so Mike Toy, third question says, what was the most challenging time in your life, either personally or professionally, and how did you overcome or learn from it? Whew, man, the most challenging time in my life, personally or professionally? Gosh, dude. So it's interesting because I think, so I'll take you back to Marine Corps boot camp. I just saw some pictures of myself I should go get them. They're actually right over. I saw some pictures of myself in Marine Corps boot camp, and man, was I in good shape, dude. Like, really good shape. And here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put this little thing up because I'm gonna walk over here and grab these pictures, but I'm gonna keep talking to you. I went into Marine Corps boot camp, and I think I was probably like 220 pounds, 215 pounds. I left Marine Corps boot camp, and I was, 167. Let me see if I can find a good picture. I mean, this is, here, see if I can get this out. This picture right here, I don't know if it's, see that right there? That's me. That's about as skinny as Ed Rush gets. Right there. All right. I'll see if I can find, there's one more here that might help. My grandfather actually took that, which is kind of interesting. Here's another one. This is me leading my platoon in graduation. Look at that guy right there. So I'm almost in that good a shape. So I look at Marine Corps boot camp, Mike, and I'm like, that was the hardest time physically that I went through. I mean, one morning after another. I always think, what would it be like if I went through that again now? Running 3 to 8 miles a day in the morning, doing massive upper body work in the classroom all day, in the bed no earlier than 10, up at 5 o'clock every single morning, every single morning, every single morning. But everything else after that, in terms of the challenges, were more and more and more and more and more difficult. Maybe not physically, but I thought about boot camp for a second. I thought, you know, the Marine Corps does an amazing job training and teaching their Marines, especially their officers. And that was officer candidate school. That's like the next level of boot camp. And the reason that they're able to do it so well is because they make it really, 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 really hard. Because if you want a great product, you create a hard training program. And so, Mike, I think God works the same way. You get through one training level and he's like, all right, take a little break, get your breath back, and the next thing you know, you go through the next thing. So maybe it's a family issue or a money issue or a relationship issue, or all of a sudden your neighbor is upset at you and you can't even figure out why, and they're having a bad day, okay? Part of the issue with our lives is that we're constantly training and we're constantly getting better, which means that each stage in life is actually probably the hardest stage. And so when you ask this question, what's the most challenging time in your life, either personally or professionally, and how did you overcome and learn from it? The answer is probably right now. I mean, and I'll bet you if you ask me 3 years from now, I would say that the answer is right now. And if you feel, as you're watching this show, if you feel like, gosh, man, why is life always so hard? You know what it is? It's just you getting trained. Like if you went back, if I went back to flight school, like if I went back to the very beginning of flight school, and I got in these little airplanes, these little T-34s right here, and I was a new student right now, I would dominate. Like with all I know, I mean, I'm 10 times better probably than the instructor in that thing. Well, maybe not 10, but like way better. And that's because I had been trained, right? And so if you go back on some of the things that are really hard for you in life, now you're like, what was that so hard? Like, I could just do that in a millisecond. I could get through it in a heartbeat. And so I bet you if you asked most people, they would say that the answer to what is the most challenging time of your life, they would probably say right now. And right now, I'm dealing with the obvious of what's happening inside of our world, while at the same time feeling like I have a solution to help change it, which we obviously need to get out to the world. And so that's really been the genesis of my struggle right now. Good stuff, dude. Really good stuff. Thank you for those of you who just joined us. My name's Ed Rush. This is the Ask Me Anything show. I'm taking your questions today. I've got, let's see what I got here in the chat group. I've got one question from Barry. Great question, dude. Really good question. I got one from Linda, and I think you put up your great. I got one from you, Nashika, and Harisha says, what's a typical day in the life? God, Anita, no joke, man. God's training program will stretch you beyond imagination and then some. When God wants to make a great poem of a person's life, yeah. All right, so let me go to Barry, way up here. All right, Barry. Barry says, millennials want everything quickly, and technology facilitates this for them. Is this why we don't see many of them on programs like this or not adopting courses like Top Gun? consultant. Barry, I'm going to jump up on the whiteboard to answer this one because I think what you said is particularly astute. But I want you to think about something that I think millennials do really, really well. And so, by the way, we're very in our world, as you know, anyone under 30 in our world is getting maligned and disparaged because the fact is, we're raising a culture of people who are very different from us and whose work ethic, frankly, is very, very different. And many people have looked at that and been like, oh my gosh, what's the deal with this? And it's true. There are some things that need to be trained. There's some things that need to be refined. There's some things that do need to be, taken through the Marine Corps training program or God's training program, okay? But that's what happens, okay? So I want you to look at life like a series of walls. And this is about the average person's life, okay? You start out and you think, man, I am going to go straight on my way to success because I can see it. You see, I'm going to do this, and this is exactly what I want to do. And you see, that's the direction that I want to go and the things that I want to accomplish. And most people feel like their trajectory getting to success is going to be like that. But what happens is the first thing you do is you run into the wall because there's always obstacles because the market changes, the world changes, the way that you communicate changes, all those things begin to change. And so you run into that first wall. And what a failure-minded person does is just simply stop right here and say, that's it, I'm done, and there's no more for me. And you've met people like this who are always like, I'll never be successful, these programs are a bunch of crap, why doesn't anything work for me? That's because when you hit a wall and a person stops, then they reinforce that pattern over and over and over again, begin to blame circumstances outside of them, and then never become successful. But what a success-minded person does is they make a right-hand turn. Then they bang into this wall right here. Then they make a left-hand turn. Then they bang into this wall right here. Then they make a right-hand turn. Then they bang into this wall right here. And then they make a left-hand turn. Now, right about here, this is when a success-minded person turns right and goes, hey, there's a wall there. And you begin to adjust around those walls to easily and seamlessly make your way to the target. So if you've ever met somebody and you're like, man, success looks so easy for you, it's simply because they're now trained, they've trained themselves in order to see the walls. Now, the millennial generation has found life easier than every single generation before them. So it's interesting and ironic that for the most part, there's plenty of people online right now complaining about how difficult life is. And there are people who frankly have a very simple life because of, like it used to be back in the day, if you wanted to look something up, you'd have to go like to a dictionary or an encyclopedia and a library, and now you got the Google machine, okay? That's just one example of how life has become much more easy. But because this generation has been trained, and by the way, this is Barry's question about millennials that I'm answering. Because this generation has been trained to find an easy way, the interesting thing, Barry, is that this generation is much better at doing this because they're used to finding easy ways around things. And so one of the things I really respect out of the millennial generation is they find newer and easier ways to get things done. You ever met a millennial and you're like, how do you do that? And they're like, oh, this is easy. And all of a sudden you find an easier solution to the problem. Okay, so now take it back to marketing to millennials. If you want to market to millennials, you better make the solution something that's easy to understand and implement, which by the way, is a truth for whichever information product that you are going to create. Okay, back to the center screen. Hopefully that answers your question. The second thing I would just tell you is that I typically don't see, I haven't seen many people of any generation investing in this stuff in their early 20s, except for the exceptional few who are really going and getting out there. And some of the big online gurus are right now in their late 20s because they moved really fast. What's up, Wendell Bugs? Most positive place on the planet. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. All right, Linda says, let me make sure I didn't miss a question. No, Linda says, help with the 90-minute Zoom webinar title that invites teachers to sign up for a 7-week master virtual instruction. First thing, I would consider, Linda, compressing that course down so that they get done faster. Got to remember, let's see, it's the end of July that we're doing this show right now. Teachers are going to start teaching again in August, September. And remember, sometimes people want the faster solution to the problem, okay? So I would consider making like a 7-day course that maybe goes over a week and a half, something like that, to give people the answer to their question. And then if they want to take longer, they're welcome to do that, okay? So option number 1, master back to school. 2020 crash course and blueprint for walking into day one with confidence, ease, and a plan. Number 2, master blueprint for back to school. Kick off the year with confidence, ease, and a plan. One thing I can't figure out, hold on a second. A Zoom webinar title that invites teachers to sign up for a 7-week master virtual instruction course. Well, just make sure the title, you have to just make sure in the title that you acknowledge the new virtual nature of school, okay? Master Back to School 2020, crash course and blueprint for master, like a course and blueprint for excelling this year, even if you hate teaching virtually, okay? Something like that at the end, or even if your next semester is going to be virtual. Make sure that something virtual is in there, because remember, you're still trying to attract people who are interested in this particular topic, because you're going to transition, right? So for example, in 2 weeks, Linda, I'll be doing a course on, I'll be doing a webinar to offer Top Gun Consulting, which is the next product that you already know that I've got coming out August 18th to the 28th. So when I do that webinar, the webinar is going to be called How to Make 6 or 7 Figures with What You Already Know, because the topic is about consulting, which moves them into a course about consulting. And so I would just make sure that your title addresses something about the virtual nature of what you're going to be teaching them, which, by the way, I think is an incredible idea, okay? If you have follow-up questions on that, we've got time to be able to do that, okay? So, what's up, Brad? Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for your awesome comments on the book. I got 3 more questions, so if you got any other questions, jump in. Chris says, what is a fair percentage to charge when a consulting startup businesses who can't pay immediately but agree to give a percentage of the company or sales made? I have quite a few friends starting businesses asking for help. All right, Chris, I'm going to do a less detailed answer to your question now, but I'm going to do a more detailed answer to your question on Thursday, because on Thursday I'm going to talk about the 6 ways to get paid, and one of those is the percentage model, okay? So, but before I take you all the way to Thursday, I'm going to jump up on the board and I'm going to give you just some thoughts from my experience working with thousands of consultants and 450 some one-on-one coaching and consulting members of mine, some of them were also consultants. And I'm going to tell you a story about one of mine, and hopefully this will ring true for you, because this literally will be probably the most important advice that you get regarding this topic, okay? So there's 2 parts to this, and the question that Chris asked, for those of you, by the way, if you just joined us, my name is Ed Rush. This is the Ask Me Anything show, and Chris's question had to do with a percentage on when you're working with new startup businesses, okay? So the good news when you're working with startups is that the percentage is, like, literally, Chris, a percentage to a startup is just some fuzzy number. Here's who it's not a fuzzy number to. Let's say you have a $10 million business. And someone comes in and says, hey, give me 5% of your business. Well, 5% of this business is like, what is that? $500,000? You know what I mean? That's a lot of money. All right. So with a real established business, these percentages actually mean something. But with a startup, the percentages are very, very loose. And people tend to give away their percentages more lightly because they're not actual dollars in the bank. Now, reverse that. If you're a business owner talking to somebody about sharing a percentage or maybe doing a partnership, think ahead into the future and ask yourself, how would I feel writing a $500,000 check to this person every single year? How would I feel about writing enough for someone to buy a house to them every single year? That's the question that you need to ask yourself in reverse. Now, so on the positive side, when you're working with people who are just starting out or startups, these numbers tend to be very nebulous, which means the difference in you negotiating 5 or 7% or 10% is not that big of a deal. Second thing, Chris, and I'll get into more of this detail on Thursday, you got to remember, also, there's different kinds of ownership, right? You've got equity ownership, which means you have a percentage of share in the actual company, which means you have value in the company, which means if it sells, you have the ability to get that value back, okay? You also have income ownership, which means you're getting paid based on the profit of the business. So for example, if you have a 5% equity ownership of the company, if they sell, you get 5%. If you have a 5% income ownership, that means if they make $1 million, you get $50,000, okay? The other piece of ownership to remember is you have voting, okay? So that means that you have the ability to help influence the decisions that the company is making. So don't forget there's different kinds of ownership that we're talking about when it comes to a percentage. Now, the last thing I will tell you about this, and this is really the bad news, is that 100 $0 equals 0. So does 50%, so does 30%, so does 10%, so does 5%. So one of my clients, one of the most brilliant guys that I knew, was doing a lot of work with some of the crypto startups. All of the crypto startups that he worked with never went anywhere. And it wasn't his fault. It was a different space and a difficult space, and it was getting very crowded, and there were a lot of people, and there were some that launched and there were some that didn't launch. But he had very lucrative deals. These things could have turned into tens of millions, in fact, in certain cases, hundreds of millions of dollars. And what he was getting paid with was the coin that the crypto business was creating. So let's say, he was working for a company. This is actually a real crypto. This isn't who he was working with. There's one called DOG, Dogecoin, which I think is hysterical that they named it Doggy Coin and didn't even know it, okay? So it wasn't the company, but let's say he came to work for Doggy Coin and he got 1 million coins as a part of his thing, which in the real world, could be valued as much as $100 billion or some mythical number. Well, if Dogcoin or Dogecoin goes under, those things are worth exactly 0, okay? So my recommendation to my client was very simple. Get something, no matter how small, up front, just to cover your work. And if you want to, allow the company to recoup that or make up the front end deal on the back end side. So for example, I had a client of mine who wanted to pay me 7.5% of a product that I was helping him create. I said, that sounds great, but why don't we do this? Pay me $7,500 now, and the first $100,000 you can keep the percentage, but at least I get paid up front. See how that works? That way, at least if it goes to 0, I still get something to walk away from my efforts, and that's the way that I did that. So what I would recommend, Chris, is as you're coming to these, I'd ask them, hey, what kind of budget do you have to get going? And by the way, if you, I don't know if you're enrolled in this, but if you're not, you should be. If you go to edrush.com/topgun, what I'm teaching you right now, I go for about 2 hours into this conversation, the one that I'm about to do with you briefly right now. This conversation is about finding out the budget that they have to work with you. It's about solving their specific problems. And so you're going to get deep on what their problems are, their biggest challenges, and then you're going to create a series of questions to ask them what they might have to budget. The best case scenario for you, Chris, is to come on as a retainer-based consultant with an additional bonus of a percentage of the company as you continue to work for them, okay? So hopefully that helps. And by the way, if you are not enrolled in the Top Gun Consulting Program, we start in 3 weeks. You're not going to want to miss it. It's awesome, and the manual is incredible. I'm only saying it because I'm like 99% of the way done. All right, so Linda DeLisa says, teachers are very active on Twitter, forming communities surrounding navigating school logistics. Woo! I would have never thought about Twitter, but you ought to go take a look at that. As a millennial, Barry's right. I'm consistently looking for easier ways to do things, but that also motivates me to get into programs and courses. So you are a rare bird, David. David Zetz is one of those millennials that thinks a 14-hour workday is short. Dude knows how to get it done. So now I'm thinking the course should be 7 days to, yes, right, 7 days. Because remember, people don't want the solution over 7 months or 7 weeks. They want to get the solution so that they can get into school. Very, very good. Let's see. Oh, okay. I mean, and I'm Nishika. I'm pronouncing. I think I'm pronouncing your name right. By the way, if those of you just joined us, my name's Ed Rush. This is the Ask Me Anything show, which means you can ask me anything. We got about 10 minutes left, so if you got questions, throw those into the chat. Nishika says, "What are some scalable businesses you recommend to start in 2020?" My biggest, number one, single most important recommendation is in some way get into the business of giving advice. It could be for anything, okay? It could be for health or fitness or dieting or weight loss or business or lead generation or speaking. It could be for live streaming if you're using social media or Instagramming or something. But what is happening right now in the world is the professional consulting agencies like Anderson Consulting and companies like that are shrinking, while at the same time, people are still hiring consultants, but they're hiring people like you and me. Because why would you hire a big company to have them send a bunch of college people into your door when you can actually work with someone, okay? And my experience is that the people that I've seen launch fully scalable businesses in the last 5 to 7 years have been people who are essentially giving advice or giving people help for a living. One of my most successful niches, in fact, there's several people watching the show right now who have done this. One of my most successful niches are people who help other people launch and write books. So for example, my book, 21 Day Miracle, I had someone help me publish this. I wrote the book, but he helped me get the book cover, do all the editing, helped me find contractors. His name was Jim House, and I paid Jim to help me help me launch the book. Okay, Jim was actually a person who came to me, Nashika, about 6 years ago with a business idea, and I actually shifted him in to helping people launch books, and now he charges $40,000 or more to help someone write and publish a book, okay? So he wouldn't have been able to do that selling information products. He probably wouldn't have been able to do that out teaching in the real world, but he was able to do that because he was able to find and attract the right kind of person. So I always tell people who are looking for money now, the fastest way to get paid right now is to go find someone with a problem or a challenge and then give them a deal, an offer they can't refuse to solve that challenge. Whether it's you want to lose an extra 10 pounds or can I help you improve your Instagram presence? Whatever that is, there's always people out there that could use your help to be able to do that. And I don't know why I keep mentioning Instagram, but sometimes I get like a intuitive kind of thing, and it may be that for you, okay? So if you're particularly good at Instagram, there's businesses and solopreneurs out there who would love your help to be able to dial in their social media game so that it looks amazing and represents their brand, and you would be surprised at how much people would pay you, especially if they're making money or getting leads from the work that you're doing. So thank you, very good question. Well, you're welcome to ask a follow-up to that if you want to as well. All right, hey, my name's Ed Rush. This is the Ask Me Anything show. We're about to wrap it up, but I've got a few more questions in the docket. Harisha asked, like the simple question. Okay, so so she says, what does a typical... I'm just laughing, dude, because I'm just trying to figure out how my wife would look at this question. Okay, so the first thing you need to know is there's no such thing as typical. I used to think this was dysfunctional, by the way. I don't think it is anymore. My schedule is different. It's so different from day to day and from week to week. Now, I typically will find myself into seasons. So let me just tell you about a season I'm in right now. Some of you remember back when we were doing EdTalks Live back in April, I was on 21 straight days where I woke up at 5:59 every morning. Every morning, 5:59, 5:59, 5:59. Every morning, 30 minutes of kettlebells or yoga. Every morning. I actually did that for, I think it was 63 straight days, okay? And then I'm like, forget this, I'm off it. And then I went for a stretch, Risha, where I woke up, literally I woke up whenever I woke up. Like, well, sometimes I woke up at 6, sometimes I woke up at 8:30, you know, depending on that. And right now I'm actually waking up every single morning at 6:59. So I get my day started at 7. So let me just tell you what I did today. It'll give you an idea of the frame for the rest of the work that I do. And I'll put it in 2 categories, daily and then weekly. Okay, so first thing is, on a daily basis right now, I wake up at 6:59, get up, go downstairs, get some water, usually drink a big thing of water, like about half of this usually goes down in the morning, and then The first hour of the day, I usually drink that. I'll drink about 5 or 6 of these a day. Water is super important. Okay, so I'll drink a bunch of water. Usually I go down to my office, which I'm in right now. Lately in the morning, I've been taking my yoga mat outside and doing about 30 minutes of yoga. Very light stuff. I'm working on just overall just flexibility, a little bit of breathing, about 30 minutes. I feel great after 30 minutes, no matter, like last night I couldn't fall asleep. I was up till about 1 o'clock in the morning, woke up at 6:59, kind of sluggish and groggy, but after 30 minutes of body movement, I feel really good. Sat in my chair, okay, for the next 30 minutes in the morning, this is what I've been typically doing. I'll pull out my Bible and my journal, I'll read just a little bit, then I set my timer for 30 minutes, close my eyes, and I meditate for 30 minutes. Now, again, this isn't every day and in the year, but this is what I'm doing right now. The 30-minute meditation, I do on my own. So sometimes people use meditation apps. I've kind of pushed those aside for now. What I'll do is I'll spend the first few minutes just breathing, focusing on my breath, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in my breathing. For me, I've learned that counting to 5 is better than counting to 10, because counting to 5, you don't lose your train of thought. By the time you get to 10, sometimes you go to 15, you're not even paying attention. Okay? So I do about 30 minutes of that. I'll breathe for a few minutes, focus on that. Then I'll just focus on my body, see if there's any areas that feel out of whack. I will literally talk to my body if I need to. So for example, if I've got like a little back problem or a little knee problem, I will literally look at my knee and be like, thank you for the message you're telling me. I would love to know what that is. And then I'll listen to whatever my body's saying, and then I'll release that. And by the way, if you have headaches, this is one of the fastest ways to get rid of headaches. I can't go into the detail on this now, but I will just simply tell you, a lot of times your body's trying to tell you something, and when you let it tell you, the problem goes away. Okay, not all the time, okay, but sometimes it does. Then what I typically do is go upstairs, hang out with the baby for a little bit, hang out with my kids, talk to my wife, get a good solid breakfast. This morning I had eggs and some sausage and avocado and some green juice. And then I'll come down, and normally my workday starts about 9:15 in the morning. First thing I typically do is do the first and most important thing for today, which is getting set up for the show. Then I jump into my email, go through some easy email stuff. Usually I'll write down what my big tasks are for the day, and most days there's 1 or 2 or 3. Like today I've got a manual to finish for a Top Gun consultant. I've got the weekly flight brief to finish for tomorrow, and then I've got some details on a trip that I'm taking this week, and that's basically about it. So very easy day when it comes to getting those things done. I'm done typically in the 4:30 to 5:30 range. That next 3 hours is dedicated pretty much mostly to family time. I'm upstairs, we're getting ready for the meal. I've been reading my kids Lord of the Rings lately. We're almost done with Fellowship of the Ring. So I'll do that, and then my wife and I'll hang out, or I'll come down and read. And typically I will spend the last hour, maybe 2 hours of my day reading. So there's things that, like this book that I just showed you. I don't know why I threw it on the floor, because now I gotta go get down and get it. This book that I told you, I started reading this last night, and I got to, I don't know, page 141. And so I do a lot of reading, and that reading mostly comes at night. I just find that the best time to do that is at night, when your brain isn't as active, but your subconscious is really processing things, and then I start the new day. Saturdays and Sundays, it typically don't work, so Saturday is a day where I get stuff done around the house. Sunday is a day where we just rest and relax as a family, okay? So that gives you an idea of a typical day, and then that might totally change. Like sometimes during the week, I'll take a single day off just to rest and to pray and to meditate, where I'm off email, and I've been doing that lately on Fridays. Okay, so really great question. Thank you for that. Let's see. David Zetz, former colleagues have reached out about how to start their online training business since gyms keep shutting down. I don't want to give a bunch of free advice because I'm busy with my own biz, but they're friends and want to help. What is a man to do? I mean, here's the thing. If you got buddies, giving them a little bit of advice, I do that with, like if Mike Koenig calls and says, what are you doing for LinkedIn? I'll show him what I'm doing. He's showing him what I'm doing. So you don't have to be weird about free advice. I know that I talk about the futility of free advice, but I'm talking about people who should be coming to you as businesses. So what you can do, David, is you can just do a simple transition. You can just go, hey, let's jump on the phone. Let me show you what I'm doing. And then if it makes sense for us, maybe we can put together some kind of a business deal where I can help you out, right? And I'd say it right in the beginning, right? Let's jump on the phone. Let me see how I can help you out. Or let's jump on Zoom. Let me see how I can help you out. And then if it makes sense, let's put together some sort of business deal where we can work together. And then at least in the person's mind, they're coming into this conversation with an open mind that they may be working with you or paying with you. And again, You could get a little bit up front, a little bit of a percentage, a little bit of some piece of the pie there if you want to. But at the same time, potentially you could also be recruiting people who could be working for you as your own trainers and consultants. So good stuff. All right, I think there was one more question in there. And I think that's it. Good. If you have any more questions, write them in there. We're going to wrap up here in just a second. We're almost out of time anyway. So Chris says, curious about the opioid situation, opinions of medical marijuana. I know some former Air Force guys running CBD companies with kids with seizures getting cured, but also a lot of potheads walking around our neighborhood. Yeah, I think, Chris, just like anything, it's, God's given us a lot of gifts in our world to solve a lot of problems, So let me give you an example. Wine, beer and wine basically saved humanity from water that was killing them. And they didn't even know that the fermenting process and the heating and fermenting process was killing all of these germs. And so there's a verse in the Bible that speaks of wine as a gift of God to make glad the heart of man. But it also says, don't be filled with wine, but instead be filled with the Spirit. So the God and His Word is really good at balancing things, It says, hey, this is this gift, man. This is something that I've given you. But also at the same time, you shouldn't use it too much. And, it can hurt you if you use it too much. And we live in this complicated, hey, what's up? Jerry Nieswander, my man. You look good too, dude. We need to jump on here and do a show. By the way, this guy, I'm going to finish answering your question. Jerry's a longtime friend of mine. He's the brain behind some of the biggest bands in the world. That's all I'll tell you about this guy. But if I started naming bands, you'd be like, oh, man, I know them. You might not have heard of him, but you probably heard of them. So you look good too, buddy. All right, let's catch up soon. Where was I? Oh, so let's go back to marijuana. I think there's scientific proof that in certain applications it's particularly helpful. Much like there's probably scientific proof that in certain cases drinking a glass of wine every day is particularly helpful. Not drinking a bottle of wine every day, okay? All right, so you ever seen somebody who you look at and they've been drinking their entire life? Their nose is red, their skin is all disastrous, that they're breathing bad. They've been drinking their whole life. And so just like anything in life, a little bit too much of one thing or a little bit too little of another thing will be a problem. And I think if you look, for example, and I'm answering this question about medical marijuana, by the way, if you look at how our culture legislates, so we legislate like kindergartners, all right? You know what kindergartners do? It's good or bad. Pendulum swings one way or the other, okay? And the pendulum swinging one way right now, but it used to be tough on crime, war on drugs, marijuana's a drug, put them in jail, okay? And that was too much, but at the same time, hey, everybody should just smoke dope all day long. It's screwed up too, okay? And so I just think that, different people are different, and what helps people are different, and everything, I think Ben Franklin said, everything in moderation, including moderation. All right, so that's really good. You guys are amazing. Thank you for your comments, my man. All right, so I'm going to wrap up for today. Don't forget, on Thursday, I'm going to talk about the 6 ways to get paid. 6 ways to get paid. Don't rhyme anything with that. I could already read your minds. You're all trying to make up a new rhyme. Don't do that, okay? We're going to wrap up today's show. Make sure you come on Thursday. If you haven't already done so, click that little like button below and share this with your friends. It's been a blast. Don't forget, we're Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern. Speaking of which, next week, I'm going to be remote and on location. You're not going to want to miss the show on Tuesday. I will talk to you soon. I love you, and I like you, and EdTalks Live is out.